I am Professor Ellen Helsper. I'm Professor of Digital Inequalities at the Lund School of Economics and Political Science in the Department of Media and Communications. At the LSE, in the Media and Communications Department, we've been involved in the From Digital Skills to Tangible Outcomes project since the very beginning, when we founded a project with our partners in the Netherlands and in the UK at the University of Oxford, in the Oxford Internet Institute. So we've been there at the conception of the idea of DiSTO. And in addition, in 2012, I published a paper called the Corresponding Fields Model of the links between social and digital inequalities. And that kind of model of linking historical inequalities to inequality in access and skills and different types of engagement in different domains with technologies such as the internet and mobile phones to these kind of tangible outcomes that stand at the base of the project. So that model, in combination with the work that our colleagues were doing in the Netherlands of developing kind of classifications of inequalities, has stood at the basis of the From Digital Skills to Tangible Outcomes projects, and that is how we have been involved in this project. Yeah, that's another very good question. From the beginning, this project has had as its aim to really design instruments and tools and models that could be applied across cultural and national contexts. So the biggest challenge was also the biggest kind of goal of the project, and this has remained the case until now, where we look at, can these models that have been developed, or these instruments that have been developed mostly in the global north, and even more specifically in the United States of America and in Western Europe, can they actually be applied and used to look at this phenomenon of the links between social and digital inequalities in other parts of the world? It's not to say that in the global south this research hasn't been done, but it's focused mostly on access and skills, while in the global north, especially when we started this project, there has been much more emphasis on the broad kind of spectrum of inequalities that might exist, also in terms of the kind of different types of engagement that people might have, or the different types of outcomes that people might have. And now that we've expanded the project to include, beyond the original founders in Europe, to work in Los Angeles, which is a very multicultural city, but also the work that we've been doing since also very early on with our partners in Latin America, and now with some more recent projects in other parts of Europe, for example, in Spain, where we are looking at job searches, and where we, like in the US and in Latin America, are trying to map inequalities at a very local level. And now that we've expanded that project also, in addition to the Middle East, through our project in Kuwait, we are seeing these challenges kind of multiply. But we've also seen that there's some universalities and some unique features in each country that make it very challenging to do research, but possible if these instruments are designed in ways that are validated, and thinking about these kind of more theoretical models that allow us to understand what is universal in digital inequalities and what is kind of specific and context bound. The most interesting things that we found, I mean, there are plenty, there are many, but have to do actually with some of these cross-cultural differences in how these relationships play out between social and digital inequalities. While the models that we were using before and the hypotheses and the assumptions that we had before were about linear relationships between historical inequalities and digital inequalities, what we are seeing that these play out differently in different countries. So one example is the research that we've been doing in Chile with our partners there has shown that the relationship between education, formal education, and the kind of tangible outcomes and opportunities that people get from using technologies is not necessarily linear, like we've seen in other countries like the UK and the Netherlands. In the UK and the Netherlands, we see that people with more formal education or higher levels of education tend to also have higher levels of skills, tend to be more engaged in a broader sense with technologies such as the internet and mobile phones. While in Chile, one of the initial findings, or one of the findings that we're looking at right now, show that actually people with lower levels of formal education, so lower levels of education, once they acquire access and skills, especially more technical operational skills, what we see is that they are actually able to take up opportunities to a much higher level than some people with kind of more medium or average levels of education in the context of Chile in particular. So these kind of questions, these models that we've had about these kinds of relationships between historical and digital inequalities, these social and digital inequalities, and we are now looking to kind of test these assumptions across the other regions that we're working in, such as South Africa and Middle East and Asia, and in, of course, still Europe and the US.